Buongiorno a tutti, bentornati o benvenuti a POLIS Teatro Festival. Oggi entriamo nel cuore del focus di quest'anno, il German Focus. Sono molto felice insomma, di vedervi numerosi sia in sala e spero anche online oggi o nei mesi a venire. E abbiamo qui con noi sia dal vivo che online alcuni ospiti che voglio ringraziare tantissimo di essere qui. E ora inizieremo a parlare in inglese perché abbiamo deciso, insomma, come anche negli anni passati, di fare questi incontri dedicati forse più a dei temi per i professionisti in lingua inglese, quindi perdonatemi se inizierò a parlare un'altra lingua ora. Però vi volevo ricordare che insomma il programma del festival continua anche ancora oggi fino a tarda sera e domani vi invito tutti, soprattutto già in tarda mattinata a mezzogiorno, al Teatro Sociale di Piangipane a iniziare con noi la giornata con le cerbottane e proseguire con i cappelletti dei volontari del Teatro Sociale come consuetudine ormai. Per il resto del programma del festival lo trovate online. I will switch to English. I want to thank all the guests involved in this roundtable about the German theatrical system, or maybe even better said, about contemporary theater in the German-speaking languages. We invite them to bring here their personal experiences as curators, public or independent structures. And I want to thank a lot Tom Mustroph, who is a journalist and a critic that will moderate this roundtable. I also invite the audience who is here with us to be involved in the discussion. So if at a certain moment you have any questions or you want to share your personal consideration about the Italian experiences or the differences between the two systems, you are really invited to take to take the word and be part of our discussion. So I leave the floor to our guests. It's a pleasure and thank you. I leave the power of the microphone.
Thank you, Agatha. Thank you that you are here and that you are interested in the German focus. And for the German focus, we have German-speaking experts in the theaters in the German-speaking countries. So we will have get some experience from institutional theaters, but also a bit on independent theaters and, of course, of the festivals. I'm happy to present to my left, but from this side it's my right, Charlotte Orti from Staatsschauspiel Dresden. She is a dramaturg there. She started to work as a dramaturg in some smaller theaters in the northeast of Germany, went in 2001 to Brunswick as a dance dramaturg at the beginning, and since 2017 you are in Dresden, and she also curates in Dresden the festival Fast Forward, what is a festival for young European directors. Thank you that you are here. And I hope you found also some interesting things already in this festival here, maybe for your festival. On the outer side of the table is Gábor Thury. Gábor works for the festival Steirischer Herbst in Austria and in Graz. He himself was born in Budapest in Hungary, and he works since 2 years, since 2022 at Steirischer Herbst, and concentrates a lot about new formats, about participatory theater, and also about he focused on social political aspects of theater in the performances he works with. And on my back online we have Florian Borchmeier. There he is from Berlin. He is a dramaturg at Schaubuehne. and he is there also responsible, or mainly responsible, for the festival FIND, Festival of International New Dramatic, what is really one of the finest festivals in Berlin, I'd say. Yeah, I would like to start with Charlotte, and that you get a bit an information about the institutions our three guests represent. Some words about the Staatsschauspiel. It's quite big tradition. I mean, and if Wikipedia is correct, then it goes back to 1667 when the first theater and opera house in the court of Saxonia was founded. Since then there were, and I was surprised when I read this, because usually I think Italy was more a pioneer in the arts, but the first new big theater here, the Teatro Comunitativo, was founded much later, I guess. So Germany was, in this case, a bit earlier. It's quite a big house, because it consists of the opera house and the drama house, and in the some technical information. So the big stage hosts 786 people, and there's a so-called small house which has 3 stages with 300, 150, and about 100 spectators. The theater house itself has a budget of 25 million euros annually, and but it shares also some administration staff with the opera house, and there are 73 people only for the arts, so ensemble, intendant, directors, and 261 person in general, so it's quite a big institution. And they produced in this season 23 premieres, including 4 premieres of the so-called Bürgerbühnen citizen stage ensemble, what is also a special thing where Charlotte will explain a bit what that is. And but before we go to Bürgerbühne and before we go to the festival, maybe some general words about the program of the main house. What are the main topics? What interests you in the program? Are there some trends you would emphasize and stress on? So, yeah.
Hello, thank you for the invitation, Agatha and Davide. First, I have to make one correction. I'm not part of the dramaturgy at Staatsschauspiel Dresden. I'm doing the festival, so I would try to describe a bit what my colleagues are doing there when you ask for the main stages. But it's one anecdote maybe, because it's always interesting if you're invited in a discussion like this, that you start thinking about your own roots, which you don't do usually in your daily work that much. And Dresden is as well a place where the Neubauerin, so one of these kind of streets and wandering theaters, spent a part of her life. So it's you have here as well in history the, let's call it the independent scene, and like the states or monarchies theater somehow side by side at certain points, which I think is interesting for the German theater history. You have to imagine the Dresden Staatstheater, so we are the drama theater is part of the big state theaters, which consist of 2 like separated parts, the opera in the big Semper opera and the drama theater. So, and they have 2 intendants, so it's independent in their artistic directions, from each other, but in their structures, organizations, administration, they have connected parts. So it's like one organization. And then you have the big house, which is a building that was finished 1913, so just before World War I. On the one side of the town, which the River Elbe goes just directly through, and the smaller theater is a newer one and on the other side of the river. And it is not historical, so it does not have this representation. And of course, every artistic direction has to think about what is the one side and what is the other side of the river, and how you manage to mingle the audiences so that they go on both sides, because there are always some who only go to the big theater and there are always some who only go to the small one. And I think it's not how to say, it has a reason that the citizen stage is based on the small theater side. And because until today, people tell that they have a kind of how to say, that sometimes they hesitate to enter the big house because they check before, what am I wearing? And so it's the architecture that gives an attitude or has how to say, a status that from some people say it gives an influence or has an influence. I'm in my generation, I never had paid attention on this. I always went to theater in jeans. But now I experience that the younger ones, they feel different about it. So what...
And the programming is also considering the people who come to one side of the River Elbe and to the other side of the river?
No, I would not say this, because you always try to not have these differences in status. If you want to make theater for the city, you try to encourage the people to mingle. So that means, for instance, but of course the big house has like 750 places and the small house 350. So it's clear, there's the difference. So you think about what you do in the big house. And in fact, maybe I have to start with the fact that we have two in-house directors, two women, Daniela Löffner and Lily Sykes. And Lily Sykes is a director who grew up in the UK and was educated there and in France and in Germany. So she has already a kind of an international background. And they are those who are like working in a more constantly way as well with the company. So, and then there are, which is like normal in the German theater system, a lot of guest directors who are coming with their team. They're scenographers, they're costume designers, they're video artists, they're musicians. And there are some, one could say, especially in a big house, those who give a certain aesthetic language to the program. So it's Volker Lesch, who has already or kind of started his career in Dresden, but on another artistic direction. Sebastian Hartmann, who is one of the directors who is really working in a very visual way. Then Sebastian Baumgarten used to do some works. Frank Kastorf is going to come the next season. So, and Claudia Bauer, she did an adaptation of a novel, Vaterland, so Featherland. Lösch did the Three Ponies opera, and this is, I'm talking quite general, no? It's not all the aspects. And in on the small stage is like more midway experiments, as well more contemporary drama theater texts, but as well adaptations, and as well devised plays. So, but for instance, what is an exception, a director like Reinhard Grebe, he is doing his devised pieces on the big stage because it's a kind of an entertainment position, how we call it. So you have a mixture of different texts from different epochs, from different times, different artistic languages, to have a diversity that should attract as many people as possible.
How many rehearsal time have the productions usually?
I would say around between 7 and 8 weeks. Some have more, some have less, but you have to take into consideration it's a repertory theater. So the actors and actresses, they are playing performances every night. So when it says you have 8 weeks of rehearsal time, that means in the morning, and then you see who is left of your cast in the evenings. Or you find other ways of rehearsing. Then we have now certain rules. For instance, this is quite new. I think the first 3 Saturday mornings of every rehearsal period are free. So it's always the awareness to take attention on the workload for the actors and actresses, for the assistants, as well created some rules that the teams that are invited to work at the theater have to accept. So as a director, as a team, you come, you really have to check beforehand your schedule, how many time you really have together with the cast.
Let's switch to Bürgerbühne, to the citizen stage theater. So I guess it was already founded in 2009. So how was it created, and which impact has it on the Schauspiel in general?
Miriam Scholl developed it together with the former artistic director Wilfried Schulz, who is now in Düsseldorf, and as well implanted a citizen stage there. And Miriam developed it. The principle is to produce professional productions with amateurs. So you provide the whole structure of a professional theater with stage, rehearsal stage, scenography, and the whole team, and work with people from the city. And they did set up, it's quite a mixture if you look from the artistic point of view, so it's some like classical repertory pieces they decided to work on. For instance, this year they opened with Per Gynt and did a production with young people. So they are still going to school. They are trying to address different, let's say, community, but it's not always the same way. So they are making a call for young people if the topic needs young people, or they did make a piece about fathers, or they are making a piece about people who want to marry, or about people who have experiences with sex clubs. So it's depending on the topic, they are making calls and like castings to require people who would develop together with a professional team a devised piece. Of course, they are not rehearsing like the professionals are rehearsing, because it's people who are working. So they rehearse in the evenings, and then at the end it gets more intense. And then they have the classical phase on stage and are having a premiere and are playing these performances in the repertoire.
And finally to the festival Fast Forward. I mean, what I found interesting is that you brought it from Brunswick to Dresden, what is also not that usually, that formats travel from one theater to the other. Maybe you can explain that, and also the aspects that you give a prize for one young director, and that he or she in the next season can do a work with the ensemble, and it would be interesting if you could explain how that works. Young, usually independent artists, when they are confronted with the big apparatus of Staatsschauspiel.
Yes, the festival was, we started it 2011 at Staatstheater Braunschweig, which is 200 kilometers southwest of Berlin. Now we are 200 kilometers southeast of Berlin in Dresden. And it was the idea of Joachim Clement, the artistic director, who said, okay, we have in Germany this emerging artists festival, but they are only national. Why not doing an European version? So he asked Barbara Engelhardt, a curator who lives in France, was a German, who established something like that already in Strasbourg. And then we developed it together for Braunschweig. And it's a 4 days festival, and it's between 7 and 8 productions from all over Europe by young directors who have done more than 5 professional productions. It's not about, there's no age limit because the situation for emerging artists is so different in the different countries. So to take this into consideration, and as well for us, because it is not one of the big theater cities, to think about if you make a European festival by young artists, no one knows, you have to translate the language, you have to do it with subtitles. How are you interesting the audience? Because it was clear from the beginning that we not only wanted to do something for the professionals or the professional public, so we thought, okay, how can we make sure that the festival has consequences for us as a theater and as well for the audience? And this was like the motivation to have a jury that awards a prize. So to confront us ourselves with the task to work with somebody from abroad, with somebody who is young, with somebody you have to explain your system, and you as well want to learn something from abroad. And this was the idea, and it was so, how to say, it was so mind-opening right from the beginning that it was impossible to not bring it to Dresden somehow. And even if the task is there every year really to have a mixed audience, not only the young ones, not only the ones who are as well coming to the other performances, but as well to create an atmosphere that it's mingling people, because as well the young directors, is my experience, don't only want to make theater for the young people, but get the feedbacks from all over. So this is the task.
Yeah, let's switch to Schaubuehne because Florian has already waited there remote. I guess Schaubuehne, everybody of you knows, it's a quite young theater compared to Dresdner Staatsschauspiel. It's about 300 years later, founded in 1962 by a group of actors. In 1970, Peter Stein came, and the most famous time of Schaubuehne, at least in the history, started. In 1982 they moved into the current house, what is a former cinema, but I also find quite interesting that other architecture also is used for theater, and since 1999 Thomas Ostermeier is intendant there, the first 4 or 5 years together with the choreographer Sascha Walz, but it was also an interesting construction, so to have drama and dance together, but as you could imagine, when that it stopped, it means it was not always that very successful. Florian is in the theater since 2011 as a dramaturg. The budget of the theater is around 25 millions. 20 millions come from the state and 5 million, so that means 20% are own generated revenues. They produced in the last season 6 premieres in the big house, 5 in the studio. The big house, they have 3 stages, one for 450 people, one for 400, and the third one for 280. The studio has 99 places, and then they have also a temporary new stage just around the corner with 85 guest productions who are invited, and also own productions who are also shown, and sometimes also own productions by international directors. So this edition of Fine had 8 international productions and 2 own productions. Yeah, I mean, that's how many people wait. It's 238 people who are working in the theater, so also quite big, and 27 from the ensemble, so 27 actors and actresses are working there. So first, Florian, I would like to have some insight from you about what's big house, what the general program consists of, what are the trends, what are the production conditions you have there before you go to your festival. So first is the main program, please.
Yeah, perhaps. Hello, first of all. Perhaps main difference between a theater as Schaubuehne and some theater, city theater like Staatsschauspiel Dresden, is that Schaubuehne is only one of like 5 larger scale theaters in the city of Berlin. So it has another mission. I think in the city west, there's one central city theater. You need to really find an audience for everything. Let's say, like, accumulate all the art forms in one place, and also like cultivate the German theater and literature tradition. It's in some sense it has really a mission as a cultural institution in a city such as a museum. I don't want to say that negatively, but there is, I think, differently from the system in, for example, Latin America, where there are no classics at all in the program. There is always a part of classics, of European or especially also German classics as part of the program. Something that nobody would do generally in a theater in Argentina, for example. They wouldn't have the idea to make a Calderón. And that is a bit different in the case of Schaubuehne. So it is a theater that first of all has only like teatro di prosa, it's like spoken word theater, let's say. There's no opera, there is no dance since Sascha Walzer left, and there is no theater for children, and it is basically a theater for adults, and it doesn't have so much this aspect of cultivating the theater tradition. So it is much more, let's say, an artist theater than a classical city theater. And there's also like a technical big difference. As you said, it is a former cinema, this venue. This has an interesting implications. Our venues, which used to be a huge venue, like of 1,500 seats in the Weimar Republic era, is now quite an experimental place, because this one huge space was split into 3 smaller spaces, and so you have a kind of theater location which is completely different to this classical 18th or 19th century buildings, but it has a great disadvantage also that this venue is not made for making theater, which means in a traditional German city theater, it is very easy to simply take out the scenography and put in another one. So the classical case is, in fact, on the big stage, you have in the final rehearsals, you have rehearsals in the morning, and then the scenographer leaves, and in the evening you have a show with a different scenography. That's not possible in Schaubuehne. You need to install to do a technical installations of the show, which normally can take 2 days. So if you have final rehearsals in a place, in one of these venues, it is simply blocked for this for 2 weeks. And we also have like a kind of mixture between a repertory and semi-stagione system, because if you install a thing for 2 days, you don't want to play it only once. So you try to do a block of like 3 or 4 performances, and as it is 4 different venues, you as a spectators, you don't recognize that it is like perhaps several days, and that it's not every day a different play, but it is not a classical, let's say, repertory theater. And then it's like the part of the classics it exists, and there are some very famous classics that toured the world, like Ostermeyer's Hamlet or Richard III, or also An Enemy of the People. I worked in and did the adaptation, so it's not a classical Ibsen, but it is an Ibsen classic. But if you look at the season, which is already much smaller than a season in Dresden, if I heard well, it would like 24 premieres, 24 openings in the last season. At the Schaubuehne is perhaps half of it. And so there's much more focus on every productions, and there is perhaps among these 12, there is one classical thing, and the rest is not necessarily only new authors. That was something the theater did in its beginnings, in the beginnings of the Ostermeier Schaubuehne, so since 1999. In the beginning it was like a bit like the Royal Court in London, and they tried to do only new drama. That is something that is not the case anymore. So it is also a mixture between classical plays and modern plays, but it is also a lot of devised plays. And I think it is a season generally that doesn't look so similar to other theaters in Germany. And I think the main difference is also that it is a very international house. So the German directors are in minority, and I don't know if there are so many other theaters in Germany where it's the case, but you have of course Thomas Ostermeier, who has a large amount of productions in repertory, and you have also a director like Falk Richter or Jan Bosse, or Milo Rau, who is Swiss, so he's not German, I think he's more an international director, or Marius von Meinberg. But then you have like a lot of directors that are internationally renowned, like Katie Mitchell, like Simon McBurney, Simon Stone, Romeo Castellucci, Angelica Lidl, Yael Ronen, Alexander Zeldin, Anne-Cécile Van Dalen, Caroline Guillet-Lanien, so people from Robert Lepage besides. So you have many directors from completely different theater traditions who try to do something with the repertory, with the ensemble of a German theater, which is of course a clash with a completely different theater tradition, and it can be disastrous, to be honest. So it is not always successful, and there were really disastrous cases of this. But
may you explain one of the disasters, please?
No, I don't want to do that. I'm sorry. I would simply hypothetically. No, it wouldn't be nice. I don't want to say it is this production by this director. It wouldn't be nice with the director. But to say there is a language problem. So there's a cultural problem. So the language problem is if a director doesn't speak German. So you can all try that. For example, Albus Hermannis does this a lot. He says, I work in English, so it's not my language and it's not the actor's language. So we're in the same situation. We're like in a situation where nobody is really in its own territory. But there are others who need a translator, and then there is the language problem, and then there can be simply a huge difference in acting traditions. So I think, for example, there are many British directors, as I told you. I think the German style of working and the British style of working is quite compatible. So these British directors or English language directors do quite well. But if you have, for example, directors from Mediterranean countries, I think the style of working with the actors is quite different, and the German actors don't get it. And say your indications are much too exterior, and I don't understand my situation. It's a lot about like the German style of dramaturgy, that works with situations and processes. And as there is no such thing as like dramaturgy in several countries, it can be quite different, a difficult situation to bring a play to a premiere because of a cultural clash, and that is in some sense the task, and it's the challenge. But it can also be different. But I think in this case, the Schaubuehne is a bit different in its program and in the theatrical styles, because it's not so much a German theater. And to talk about the Find Festival, it is an important part of the program, and it is in Germany things like Fast Forward or like Find are quite an exception in the German theater systems for, let's say, a question of production structure, because we have these repertory systems where we do 24 or 12 premieres each season, but this implies that everything with these 240 or 260 in case of Dresden, so it's more or less the same size, these people are all in-house, which means you have all the scenography, all the costumes, all the technicians, everybody is employed by the theater. Which is a huge, I think, a larger part of the budget of the theater is simply the salaries of the people who work there. And so, if you have also the actors, if you have 27 or 30 actors that are paid 13 salaries per year, because it's not only 12, they get also an extra salary for Christmas. So if you have them already paid, you don't have any money left to do an international festival. If you do the festival, anyhow, you have to pay everybody who works there. So you have 250 people, and the majority of them isn't.
Florian, kannst du uns noch hören? Ich sagte jetzt nur, dass wir dich jetzt nicht mehr sehen, weil das Bild steht.
The structure, and then
yeah, now you are here, yeah.
Oh yeah, sorry. No, so it is like a double structure. You need to pay the existing city theater structure, and then you need to pay the festival. So normally, in a budget of a German city theater, there is no budget included for guest performances. So if you do a festival, you need to finance it, and during the time of the festival, renounce to your income that comes from the normal repertory. So you can't play your own productions that you can usually do very well, and then you have like exceptionally perhaps 1 week or 2 weeks per year a festival, which is completely different, for example, from a theater in France, which is basically invited performances during the whole season, and then there are also own productions, but it is because of the difference of the system, because there is no ensemble of actors, and there are much less people that are steadily working in the theater. So the mixture is much easier in other systems. In the German system, which is in this sense more local and more national, it is more difficult, and it is yet a very important point of the season of Schaubuehne to have this international focus through the festival. And it is not only because it is part of the season, let's say, that these international performances belong to the identity of the program and the season, but there is a strong interaction, because many times we invite directors to the festival for the first time, and then we start a cooperation with them to work with the company for the first time. On the other hand, you have directors, international directors who work with the company, and then we have the occasion to show their international productions that are not with the company, and it can be both ways. For example, Alexander Selden, the British director, we dedicated him a focus in this year's Find. We first discovered him as a British director with a British production. We invited him for the Find Festival. Then he was commissioned to do a work with the Schaubuehne's company, and now we did a focus in which you can see the work he did with the Schaubuehne company, but also his new other productions he did afterwards. So it is like a kind of a connecting point for
Florian, when
Thury and the rest.
When I could interrupt, I mean that relationship between the festival and the normal program I found quite interesting, and I would like to know if if it was already planned when you created at first the festival to have directors who then work with the ensemble, or is it a kind of effect of the festival, and that you learned that it's maybe good to bring the two parts of Schaubuehne together?
No, it is completely an effect, and it was not the idea. I wasn't in the founding group of the Find Festival, because the Find Festival has existed since the artistic direction of Ostermeier. So it was one of the first points that they did this Festival International New Drama for the first time in the year 2000, but it was a completely different idea. It was like a platform to discover new texts. So it was not a festival with invited shows and invited directors. It was like the dramaturgy of Schaubuehne read a lot of plays, and then they presented some of the most interesting new plays from the moment, often also with a regional or national focus. So you had 1 year from British New Drama, but there was, for example, also 1 year with Israeli and the other year with Palestinian new writers. And some of these texts were only read as a scenic lecture, and others were like staged, but in a workshop, in a workshop performance, or as a work in progress. So it was not a festival. It was much smaller. It had a much smaller budget. It was very much involving the own ensemble, and it was international in text, but like regional in production. And
could you explain a bit the criteria now which you use to invite productions to the festival, or even commission a bit? What are the criteria? What does interest you most?
Well, you know, there is still this continuity. There was the moment when I started to work with the company in 2011. It was like a year of a bit of change, because there were already a lot of guest performances, but which came basically out of the Prospero network, which is a network of international theaters. There's also a strong participation from Italy, from Orti, from Emilia-Romagna Teatro, and so there were like co-produced shows that were shown, but it was like we had a bit the impression that there was no curatorial focus in it. And the curatorial focus we have now is that we have more international productions that come from abroad, for the simple fact that we have the impression that in Berlin there is not the sufficient space for that. So we have very important places like the Hebel am Ufer, the Hau Theater, which does like international performances the whole year through. But of course they only have a limited budget to do that the whole year through, and so sometimes they have to renounce to larger scale productions. And then there was the fact, for example, when we made Robert, he hadn't been for 15 years in Berlin. while he traveled the whole world. The Wooster Group, the same. They hadn't been in Berlin for like since the year 2000 nearly. So one of the criteria is that we want to make the most important theater productions of the contemporary theater come to Berlin, where there is no sufficient space for them at the moment in the structure we have. That is one criterion, and then the other stays and remains what we have as the type.
You are gone away.
It has to be international.
Kannst du nochmal wiederholen, weil du warst jetzt kurz wieder weg.
Okay, sorry. So it is the focus has a strong continuity in its contents. It is called Festival International New Drama since 2000, and that is already in some part the artistic program. So it has to be international. We don't show, for example, German language productions. In very exceptional cases and for a real motive, we do this. If it's not the new drama productions, we show from our repertory for the international audience, because sometimes curators from other festivals come to our festival, and they also want to see the new drama that is played at Schaubuehne. So it's like a bit of bringing together the international part and the German part. But besides, from our own productions, we usually don't show in the German language productions, and it has to be new. So we really refuse to do modern transcriptions or rewritings of the Cherry Orchards, for example. So it is the task is that it has to be a new subject. It can happen, but it has to be very freely adapted. For example, Angelica Little sometimes takes classical text and says it's like a novel by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which is the basis, but her text is not. It's not a staging of rewriting of this classical 19th century text. It's something completely new. That is the other criterion. It has to be new, and then the fact of drama is also important, because now, of course, we have in the last decades the phenomenon that the performing arts became much more hybrid. So many projects are between theater, plastic arts, music, opera, and like this kind of crossover productions is not so much our focus. In some sense, there can be productions without any words spoken, but in some sense they still have a narrative structure. So it is a festival with shows that normally have text and that deal with dramatic structures, which is also about dramatic conflicts and also researches in the political and social present and past of the theater makers. That is something which is not imperative. We see the shows, and the ones we like the most, all of us are at the end selected. But if you look at the last editions of the festival, there is some kind of link between these performances that is the drama aspect.
Now we are already deep in the festival business that creates the bridge to Gábor and to Steirischer Herbst. That is quite a young festival, a son or a daughter of 68. Also politically, I guess, and aesthetically also a bit. And it's quite one of the biggest festivals we have in the German language region. I would say also in Europe, one of the biggest one. It's also very multidisciplinary, so it's fine arts, it's film, it's performance, it's theater, it's literature, and also a lot of now very well-known people started their career aware and quite a young age there. So when you go to the artist list of Steirischer Herbst, I guess you will find almost everybody who is important. I don't know, from Vito Acconci or Pasolini or Beckett or I guess every year there are 40 to 50 productions in the festival in all genres, and about 15 più o meno in performance and theater. The festival team consists of 25 to 30 people. Yeah, about the stages, Gábor didn't give me informations because it's every year in other locations and also sometimes outdoors. They last year they had over 400 events in 59 venues with 52,000 visits, and participating artists were more than 500 from 33 countries. So, and they do it with a budget with only, I'd say, in this dimension, with only 4 million euros. So quite impressive. What I find very interesting in Steirischer Herbst, where I've been some years ago, but not recently, is what are the criteria how you commission the works, and also how much influence you as curators take in the work, and how much time you can give the artists.
Should I answer this question right away, or also a bit about the festival in general?
You can choose.
Okay, yeah, I can
I will remind you when you don't answer the question.
Yeah, please do that. So first of all, I mean, after quite some minutes, hello everyone, and I'm also super happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And indeed, we heard now some statistics, and just to very briefly make clear what those numbers are in fact meaning. So Steirischer Herbst is actually, I mean, you said it's not that old festival, but actually it's the oldest of its kind, I would say. So that was one of the first interdisciplinary festivals, indeed founded in '68, and also indeed in the spirit of '68. So not only where after the Second World War, of course, all the new left was basically rising in the student movements, but also in Austria, it was the time where it started some kind of engagement with the guilds of the Second World War. So it was born in this spirit to create something subversive and something disruptive in Graz, which is, by the way, just in case you don't know where Graz is, it's in Austria, and it's like the second biggest, but it's way smaller than Vienna, and it's very close to Slovenian border. So it's like really a different region. It's in Styria, because Steirischer Herbst is not only a festival for Graz, but actually also for the region, which is called Styria. Steirischer Herbst, by the way, means Styrian autumn, which refers to some kind of harvest festival. I mean, at that part of the year, you know, like there are different harvest festivals. But
how many peasants still take part?
No, it just refers. It's not like it's rather how should I say, like the title of the festival, and rooted, of course, in this festivity of this early late autumn phase. And Styria is a wine region, so that's why, of course, it has something. Yes, and what makes Steirischer Herbst also special, that it's a producing festival. So basically all the productions we show are new commissions and new productions that are created for the specific festival edition, and then now I'm answering also your question, which always has a theme. So it's a curated festival, and I would say, like, since Yekaterina Degot is the festival director, it's a mixture between a biennial. It's happening each year, but still, like, the format is very close to a biennial, and the performing arts festival. So there is always a very strong curatorial angle, and also a research which usually also roots in the history of Graz and Styria. So we work a lot with local histories, also with untold histories, also digging out indeed disruptive histories from the past. But it's an international festival generally, so we always try to actually let international artists meet. Graz, the site specificity of Graz and Styria, and also local topics that of course has somehow an international relevance. And indeed, during this research, I would say we always start to program the festival, the bigger productions. I'm also a curator for theater and performance, so I will, and it's also like a festival that has more emphasis on that, so I will rather talk about that part. We start like the major commissions approximately like now for 25, and we commission, but still till the very end, because the topic is always evolving and shaping and forming, and it's very research based, so sometimes we just drop the topic also when something happens, such as the war in Ukraine. Then of course, or the pandemics, then of course very quick adjustments are needed, and this also means that it's a curatorial team of we are 3 curators and 2 assistant curators plus the artistic director of the festival. And during our research, of course, it is getting clearer and clearer what the yearly topic will be, and we start commissioning and proposing artists and productions, and we are getting in touch with artists and reaching out to them. Basically, most of the time, that's the way we program, that we reach out to artists, we tell them what angle we are going to have, or what is the direction we are going now, and if they want to take part in this journey. And what is also sometimes also like not a criteria, but actually a wish from our team. It's not like a criteria, that we really would like to bring artists to do something that they would usually not do in their own, to bring to a new point in their practice. So just an example, because maybe it's very abstract. Max Stewart, of course, a very known choreographer and performance artist. She was, of course, in 2007 already at Steirischer Herbst, but she started in the pandemics to do video works as well. And last year's edition, she did like basically one of her first video works for Steirischer Herbst, that was used for the exhibition, that was presented in the frames of the exhibition. And that's usually something what Max Stewart, at least to that point, would not do at a festival. So that's also something that we like aim for, just to bring artists to a point where they have never been yet. And in terms of
and they do like it, yeah?
To a cliff. Yes, of course. It's the experience is that challenges can be very inspiring and fruitful, and also that's also an answer to your questions. I would say it's a constant dialogue, and of course it depends on the character of the artist. So, and of course where they produce the performances or the dance pieces. But we indeed, at the very beginning, when we are talking about the concept, it's a very close exchange, and then also we check in, we visit rehearsals. So that's like a hybrid almost. As for my role, it's a hybrid of like being a production dramaturg, but of course I cannot be for that many productions, so they have also sometimes even their own production dramaturgs. But still, it's not like losing them out of sight.
And just to have an idea, you as a production dramaturg, how many rehearsal days you spent with one production?
Not too many. It's rather discussing about when are the showings, what is the situation. So it's rather really checking in. Also, it's not possible. And of course, when they are rehearsing already in Graz, which also happens. And I will also tell you a bit about our production conditions, which is, I think, also very special after we have heard the luxury of having like technicians and I mean, we are also having third but still it's a very nomadic festival without venues, and also actually without production infrastructure. So what you would have at a German state theater is workshops, ateliers, where they create, of course, different stage elements and costumes, for example, that we all don't have. So, and in this sense, we work rather almost more like a production house than a state theater. So we have to solve most of these problems on our own. So, and in terms of looking for a workshop and also finding equipments and renting them. Of course, there is a team who has already like long years of experience, so it's not unpreceded, but also the venue, since we work a lot site specifically, that means that and that jumps back a bit to the biennial logic, like a lot of found spaces, a lot of we work a lot with histories of spaces. Last year we did the opening at Schlossberg, which is like the major tourist attraction of Graz, and we work with the history of Schlossberg. That's of course like a new terrain for us, and we have to see what is possible there technically, but also production-wise, how much we can rehearse, and yeah, what can we bring out of this situation.
Could you already reveal some of the main topics for 25, so that we can maybe see when we remember this discussion how it evolved and how it changed?
I don't actually I'm not sure I'm allowed to, because we are doing the press conference in June, but we did in Venice at the biennial already like a reception, and I brought those postcards which already, so I can give it, but I don't want online to me announcing the festival topic. Yes, so this question I would skip.
What a pity. What I also read and what I found interesting also for the context here is that you do the Trigon biennial, where the Steirischer Herbst tries to look to the post-Yugoslavian countries, to Italy and to Austria. Could you explain a bit how far into Italy you go, and what is intended with it?
Yes, Trigon biennial, I'm not a big specialist on, I must say, but it's also rather a legacy of Steirischer Herbst, because it happened also, it was founded also in the late 60s, early 70s, and it was showcasing art from Italy, from Austria, and from Yugoslavia. It was a visual arts exhibition, and also with a very modernist angle. Steirischer Herbst is rather, there were editions that were frame of Steirischer Herbst. Also, that's something interesting I will tell you about the local aspects of Steirischer Herbst, because there are like such major events in Austria as well. I mean, I think Trigon is not existing since decades, but there are of course big institutions in Graz, and they also do their program for Steirischer Herbst, like Kunsthaus Graz or Schauspielhaus Graz, and we do also like a sort of partner program where we are also in contact with the institutions, but it's not part of the curated program, since of course they do their own program, but always with a back thought of doing something special for that period of the year.
Because we have now heard quite extensively about the structure and the work of the three institutions you represent here. At first I would like to know from each of you if there's some aspect of one of the other institutions or houses what you really like, what you are jealous to, what you really would like to integrate in your own institution. Is there something? Who wants to begin? Or is there nothing? You are so happy with the thing you have.
First, maybe a small correction. Dresden is not a city theater, because Florian said it, it's from the region. So it's like what we call a state theater, but in Germany that means not a national. It's not on? Is this working? Ah. So in German, Staatstheater means the theater of the region, because we have these different regions and this federalistic system. So there are no national theaters in the classical way, not centralized. But you have the state theaters and the municipal theaters. In the frame of Fast Forward, we are cooperating with another institution, which is Hellerau, European Center of the Arts. There are municipal. We are cooperating with the Arts Academy because they have a theater and we need these venues. So, and for this year it's new, we are cooperating with Kunsthaus Dresden, which is a arts place, so for visual arts, but they have a new space, and I have a project I can't talk about right now, but where we needed this space. So it's for me difficult to talk about envying something. Yeah, no, I do envy one thing. I don't have the budget to produce. And sometimes if you invite or would like to invite a production that needs a kind of an adaptation, because you have to check how it's being transferred to another place, into another language, then I feel sometimes limited. But meanwhile, I have the experience that coming from a German like state theater system, in the frame of the festival or as a curator of the festival, I meanwhile am forced to become inventative in case I do want to do something extra. So I feel that I'm reaching out for these kind of independent structures and learn from those structures from other countries, from other backgrounds, how to realize things and how to facilitate something for these younger ones or this emerging artist generation, which is usually not so easily possible in our system. So this is, I think it's very exciting to have a festival that can invite productions but can as well produce, because then you can, how to say, sharpen your tools a bit.
May I also add something, because actually it's a very good point. I would connect to it because of course, like usually with envy, you envy what you don't have, and I have the opposite, that sometimes I see like, so also at your festivals, by the way, at Find and at Fast Forward, I saw so great productions, and it would be just, I mean, it's not our angle, but I would be so delighted to show them, just simply to present them in Graz, which actually also doesn't really have a platform, like it doesn't have like a production house or an international purely theater festival that could like showcase such productions, and that's sometimes a pity, because I know that like it's not realistic to create a new production, also because our budgets are also very limited. That I forgot to tell, that producing means also hyper expensive productions, because as I mentioned, we don't have anything, so productions get expensive very quickly. So basically we never really have like real big stage designs that you would have at German state theater, or very limited rehearsal time compared to state theaters. So it's sometimes not even possible to work with specific, or with directors who are used to a specific kind of or way of working, but nevertheless they are great, and it would be beautiful to show their works. That's sometimes a pity, but of course I can live with that. It's not our angle at the festival.
Florian, you have something to steal from Dresden or Graz?
Well, yeah, it's a systemic question. I think it's not possible to steal, so I can simply envy, as you said. Especially, let's say, I think in fact I can underline everything Charlotte says, and I think we're in a very similar situation with the festival. So yes, it would be nice to produce more. And in fact, if I said like about city theater, I would still underline the this sentence because it's not meant to be municipal theater, but it's like a public theater that is the main venue for one city. And this is, of course, a very nice situation. So that is perhaps the thing that I envy. In Dresden, you have like the central institution of the city as to theater, and yeah, you can create a lot of awareness. And in a city like Berlin, you have to fight a lot because there is a lot of competition among these theaters, of course, which is also a positive point. But what I envy most is the production system you can have at Steirischer. First of all, let's talk about money. We have the basic funding, external funding we need to apply for only 500,000. So of course it is not everything because the Schaubuehne is there, the technicians are there, the administration is there. It's all cash you have to calculate. But our production budget, let's say, like our global invitation budget for these only 8 productions is 500,000 euros. So it's 1/8 of what there is at Steirischer Herbst. And of course, I would love to do a bit larger festival because at the end you spend the whole year seeing shows, and what you can show is a selection of productions, and there would be more. You could show, and in fact many artists are very sad and very disappointed that we don't invite their productions, and it is really not because we don't like them, but because we have to focus on some few things. And it is what, even if we could raise the budget, it is and say we don't do 9 days, but we do 18 days of festival, it wouldn't be possible inside the structure of ensemble and repertory theater, where all the rest of the actors and the workers are still paid, and the actors can't play anymore. So what do? You say, okay, 3 weeks off vacation, we don't need you anymore. That's the maximum limit we can do inside of this system. And of course, it is nice as an interaction of the things I mentioned, but also, of course, it is sad not to have more.
I would like to know, like to put a question in 2 directions now, or 2 questions in 2 directions. One, maybe also to the audience and to the artists in the audience, after having heard about the 3 quite different institutions in Germany. May you think about where you would like to work most, and also why. But before you answer that, I would put a question to our 3 guests. The big question about, do you see some very specific trends, aesthetically, structurally, administrative, in the German-speaking theater system, what you would like to point out? I mean, I have to say, I struggle with answering the question because the system is so big. There are so many different institutions. I looked up at the Deutscher Bühnenverband just to give you some figures. We have 140 public theaters. We have 200 private theaters, and there are 130 orchestras, 600 houses without ensemble, and 400,000 producers for tournée theater, and I don't know how many hundreds independent groups. So to see their trends, I really struggle, but maybe you are much smarter than me and can answer the question.
Of course, I wouldn't answer the entire question because I myself, especially now from Graz and from a very different context, I don't have the overview on like the German theater system and the tendencies. But I think what you can also kind of recognize, like recently, of course, it's nothing like very new, but the discourse is about, and that's more of a structural, but of course this structural aspect has also an aesthetic aspect as well, is about representation. So I think a couple of years ago it wouldn't have been possible, for example, that Thalia Theater, which is a major theater in Hamburg, and by the way I also worked there before, is called out because there is only like one woman in the next season, in the last season of the artistic director, and like generally the discourse is about representations, about different perspectives, migrant perspectives, gender perspectives, critical perspectives. I think that's a tendency that is for sure there, and that is also like getting stronger and stronger on a structural level. So there were theaters experimenting with introducing 100% quote for female directors for, like, I don't remember how many seasons, but there was for sure one season. There are like theaters that profile themselves as like post-migrantic theaters. So I think this kind of diversity of perspective and who is allowed to be represented on stage and who is allowed to do theater is definitely a very strong. I mean, alone the fact that that I was without a doubt accepted at Thalia at the age of 25 to come work here. It's the other part of the coin, that they were like hyper open. Like the dramaturg who doesn't speak perfect German, I think maybe it would have been a bigger discussion like a few years before that. It was already 10 years ago, but still. Yeah, that's my addition, but probably there are a lot of more tendencies we can talk about.
I'm thinking a lot of these kind of questions, and then I always think I don't like these general tendencies, because the one thing, I mean, Gábor is right, there are discourses, there are discussion, and they come like from societal conflicts or discussions, and of course we are public, so we have to react on this, we have to answer, response, to make proposals. I'm sometimes wondering why the proposals or experiments in the German theater system in reacting on the different tasks coming from society, coming from our times, is not so broad, so that there are so many sometimes similar reactions, despite the fact that it's quite different theaters with different artistic teams, so there are not so many, I have the feeling, individual responses. And so sometimes I think, so what happens with the citizen stages, for instance, to go towards the audiences, to look for the communities you have the task to represent as well, or to give voice to. This is something that for me is still somehow at the beginning. And maybe one funny thing from the festival's perspective, 2 years ago I invited a production that was a master's or graduation piece from the university in Gießen, and the artist came from Barcelona, so he learned German to make his master in Germany, and his graduation piece was a board game. So 3 board games for 24 people at a time, 8 people played one round. It was called El Candidato, the candidate, and they had always 2 people had to build a team, political parties, and fight against each other. And he had to justify in his for his graduation why he considered this to be theater. The audience in Dresden didn't have a problem with it. They gave him the audience award of the festival. So these kind of experiences I like a lot, because sometimes from the inside then you think as a curator, okay, now I have to explain the audience, it's theater, and then you discover, no, the audience does not have the problem. It's us, maybe.
Yeah, I mean that's really one trend with games, with gamification in general. ask Florian if you also see some general trends what you would like to add.
Yeah, unfortunately, I agree with Gábor's observations. I have the impression that in German theater there is, since the pandemic, a very deep aesthetic crisis, because I don't see any new artistic responses. I only see administrative responses. In some sense, administrative in a broader sense, because I think representation is a bit about this. It is like how many female writers, how many migrant writers. It's about calculation and numbers. So representation and diversity is one thing. The other thing is sustainability. We also have a cultural minister in Germany who is exclusively interested in diversity and sustainability, and she's not really interested in the arts. She gave a speech last week in the opening of the Theatertreffen, and I think she is only interested in some kind of cultural political questions and not in art itself. And so besides from that, there is the organization development, which is some kind of management tool to guarantee the circumstances of the workers and also of the individual inside the process. Is something that is happening in all theaters at the moment. It's like I talk to colleagues from all theaters. Everywhere it is happening is something that tries to improve the work processes inside of a theater, but it takes a lot of energy that is not invested into the arts. Then there's a large issue about the awareness teams, or how to deal with the audience, also especially now in the Israel-Gaza conflict. What happens to if demonstrators enter the stage and interrupt the show? So there are teams that are focusing on possible conflicts that happen during the performances in order to make a theater a guaranteed safe space, which theater can never be a guaranteed safe space. And so I think these are the things the theaters think about since 2020. And if I think about how I was socialized in theater like in the 1990s, when you had on the one hand the documentary theater coming up, on the other hand like the post-dramatic forms to try to break with the traditional dramatic structures. Then you had like the Ostermeyer response, let's say, that tried to find a new way of making drama, which is not traditionally, but a response to this new post-dramatic forms. And then you have the Frank Castorf response, which is also very radical, which on one hand breaks the traditional structures, but also breaks the rules of the transparent stage, and suddenly you have shows in which during half of the performance you don't see an actor on stage because he's in a container with video cameras, for example. It's something that hadn't been done before. All these things, also like breaking the fourth wall and doing immersive installation like Signa or Thomas Bodin Nielsen did. We did that at the Fine Festival once. It was mind-blowing because we all lost the sense of reality when we entered 240 hours installation, which was like a simulated reality. These kind of things, like giving artistic responses and creative, inventive artistic responses to the things that happen in the social discourse and in society, would something I would really desire a lot. And what I see at the moment in German theater is administrative responses, and I regret that a bit, but I think it's only a phase, you know. We're in a difficult situation after the pandemic, and then with two wars going around, and the need of theaters as public institution to position themselves. It is perhaps a difficult moment, but yeah, I hope there will be more interesting artistic responses in the future.
And for the panel, I'm quite happy that we anisotropic filter on German theater, and I would like to repeat my question to Agatha and Davide. You still would like to work in one of the institutions, and if which one and why?
I don't know if I'm going to answer to this question. Yes, thank you. Because I was also thinking a lot during your talks, and it is very interesting and also inspiring, even if your structures are so different than our small organization. I also went on the web and searched a little bit about the numbers of the balances of the theaters and the festivals of our region, just to make a comparison between your structures and those who we know most. Like what I found out, it's that it's not such a huge difference for the national theaters, which it surprised me somehow, because I found out by searching the balances of the budgets of 2022, which are public in the transparency on the websites of this institution, is that the national theater of our region, Emilia-Romagna Teatro, has a budget of around 14 millions, and Piccolo of Milano, which is the biggest institution we have in the country, is around 20 millions. So it's less, but not as less as I expected. And I searched, and that there maybe is one of the biggest differences. Maybe is the theater festival that it's more similar to Steirischer Herbst. I thought about Sant'Arcangelo Festival, and they have a budget in 2022 of 1,150,000, which is even a biggest difference. So just to give some numbers, because I found it very interesting. I hope I am not boring the audience about this. And I don't know, for me, I'm talking for me, I don't know if Davide agrees, but as an artist, we always search for challenges. So we are just coming out of from an international co-production with actors of different languages, different cultures, partially from fixed ensembles, partially not, and it was the biggest challenge we ever did before. Also a live band on stage with a specific aesthetic. So, when I was listening to Florian before, talking about the disastrous production with fixed ensemble, it reminds me the disastrous moments and fears I had during this production, because when you face for the first time with the fixed ensemble, I'm talking from my personal experience, it's something completely new for the Italian scene. So, how to say, you discover as an artist that you should convince the ensemble of that you are doing an interesting project, that you are an artist that can be followed by the house, by the theater house, and by the artists that are inside this house. That was something completely new for us who were used to an Italian system or a French system, because we have co-produced also with Luxembourg several years ago, and there is this French system where you, I don't know, where you choose actors, and they are not fixed employers of the theaters. So the relationship between you and them is completely different in the positive aspects and in the negative aspects. Because also talking about the rights of the artists and artistic workers of the theater sector, it's something that this kind of system, as the one we have here in Italy, are really bringing people who are working in our sector to really precarious conditions, difficult conditions, and also as a way of expression. When you enter in a dialectic with different collaborators and artists, if you know that you have been chosen by me or by a stage director, and from the contract perspective, if you don't do what I'm asking you, your contract can expire. So you're so weak that maybe this weakness, which maybe for some directors, stage directors, can be something good, it's also something that creates less possibilities for us as creative team, artistic team, to enter in a real and a sincere dialectic, if you understand me what I mean. And so I have a question for you that it's maybe not exactly a question that regards your structure, your work, but the environment of the German speaking theater systems. From the perspective of an artist, of a freelance artist, I don't know, actor, the stage director, dramaturg, or whatever. In this kind of system, which kind of possibilities, which kind of also social protection they can have to work in this kind of system if they are not working or if they don't want to work in a fixed ensemble or in a house, in a theater house for all their life. So I don't know if you can just explain me a little bit this, because it maybe helps me to understand, and it's more similar to the condition that maybe we here in Italy have as artists, as we don't have the possibility to be fixed artists protected by a theater house.
I make an attempt, because I think there's something very interesting lies in this question, which is part of the experience with the fast forward of artists and the production taking place then in our system as well. If you're working and producing for a repertory system, that means you invite artists to work with your actors, actresses, to rehearse and make a production which is played in the repertory. If you, as an artist from abroad, now says, now I would like that this production is shown in my country, I'm organizing a tour. The German theater could say, yeah, but we can't give you our actors, we have a repertory system. If you take them 2 weeks, they are missing in our system. So this is a kind of a contradiction, that it's like a system contradiction, but it shows in a way how difficult it is to cooperate. So something everyone is looking for is made quite difficult from the system. And I have the feeling that something that would be good for the Germans to learn, and I don't know if it would help Florian's wish for the new aesthetics and as well artistic answers or proposals, how to think of facilitate production conditions that as well include a different system. So that you say, I don't know, a certain part of the year we go on the like festival structure, or we don't do the repertory. For some theaters, for instance, do it because they are, for several reasons, asked to make summer productions. So to play in the summer, which in Germany is the classical period for vacation. And if they do this, they sometimes stop the repertory in May, and then they are playing the summer theater ensuite. So these could maybe give already a hint in which direction one could think, but you never can ask, I would say it's difficult to ask the German system as a whole. This is what I tried to say in my previous attempt, that I'm sometimes surprised that there are no more individual proposals to solve certain questions, or to find another way to get along with it, because more or less all theaters are producing from September to June, then they go in summer break, and then it starts again. So it's how to say, we are rich, but sometimes not very rich in different proposals or structures.
I mean, I would like to add that there were some attempts, when we look back to the Doppelpass program, double pass program of the Bundeskulturstiftung, Federal Culture Foundations, or state agencies. They for several years had a program that institutional theaters could cooperate with independent groups, and it was a performances. There were good ones, there were catastrophes, there were people close to the madhouse after that on both sides. But also it gave houses and independent artists a lot of inspirations. But to prolong the discourse Charlotte made, a bit it sounds as if Schaubuehne would expand its model with the normal repetition program and find and give more space to find, maybe 2 months find or 3 months find. Would it be realistic, Florian?
No, and that's what I said before. It's like if you have a repertory system, you have to also assume it. First of all, you have like the actors who are employed and they also want to play. If you tell the actors, no, we are doing 2 months of find and you don't play anymore, it's not really great, and your audience doesn't like it either. You don't have to forget that in the German system, that the German system is also established with the own audience. So try to do a guest performance of a show outside of some really framing like a festival. Simply invite a show from Italy or from Hungary, even if it's famous directors, inside of the season. 2 performances on a weekend. Nobody will buy the tickets. That's a fact. So if it's not framed in the context, the audience is used to the system and also like their actors. They want to see their like local stars they are used to and they have a lot of affection for, and that's also nice. It is something that is different from what you know from other systems, but you also it is something to be protected in some sense. And there has been like this really interesting experiment that Matthias Lilienthal tried in Munich when he tried to just put because I totally agree. It is a task to extend this system and to open more possibilities of different forms of collaboration also. And when Matthias tried this in Munich and tried to mix like an independent system with an institutional system, it was basically like the a bit conservative audience in Munich that resisted to that, and they wanted their ensemble and they were in love with their ensemble. In Munich, it is a larger city. There are at least 2 large ensembles, but this was a way of doing which was a good idea, but really had a lot of resistances inside of the audience and also inside of the press. There was a kind of campaign against it, and it was at the end the discussion was not really about the artistic results of the performances that had been shown, but about some kind. It was also some kind of a cultural fight. So you have to be careful how to do this, and I think there are strategies to do this, but without necessarily breaking up the structure of an ensemble theater, which Matthias didn't either, because there was an ensemble. But I think you need to like implement it in the quite old school and institutional German system on the one hand, on the side of the theater, but also inside of the expectations of an audience, in order to make this more flexible. Because what we have in Germany is like a long fight between the institutional theaters and the freelance groups. And the freelance groups have always the impression that the big money always goes to the institutions, and they have much less possibilities like as the independent groups in other countries. And then there is like an unnecessary fight between freelance and institutional, but which corresponds also like to an economic reality. And I think there is the point where we have to develop ideas, but I'm not sure if we can do that now in this venue, although I would love to.
We are running a bit out of time, but if there's one or two questions from you guys to our three guests, feel free to do that now. There's the mic. Yeah, or we could also continue then after the bar. But if you would, I mean, I saw, Charlotte, you wrote a lot of notes, so maybe you want to add a bit. Maybe you also, Gábor, and you, Florian, just a short closing statement of that beautiful discussion.
I think it's quite complex because it's always the question on what base somehow you are discussing. So we always could say the German system has as well a lot of competition thoughts inside, and sometimes I feel we should go more thinking in direction of corporations. And I just want, when Florian was talking about the Lilienthal experiment, I thought, Florian, do you think that 2 days we are too fast because that what happened with Pina Bausch and Wuppertal would not be possible anymore today?
No, I wouldn't think that, and I think also that what Matthias did was inside of a context of a city that has a very peculiar. I'm from that city, so I know it. So I don't want to. If I speak badly about Munich, I have the right to because I was brought up there. But it is like in its cultural structure, it's a place that is very conservative, and I think there was simply a kind of incompatibility between this very interesting dramaturg from Berlin and artistic director, and a city that comes from a different theater tradition. It's a bit tragic. But coincidentally, yesterday I met like a person who is not from the theater system who said, yeah, and the first thing that this Lilienthal did was like he did a project with homeless. That's something we've seen so many times in our lives. Why does he do that? And I said, okay, to be honest, I hadn't seen that before. But it was like in this bourgeois ambience of the city, it seems it was not the open-end project that really stimulated the population. But I wouldn't generalize. I think yes, it is possible. Yes, it is possible, but it has to be there has to be like a kind of co-action between the artistic director and the place they work in, and it is also there has to be a sympathetic attitude towards it, I believe.
Thank you, Florian. Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you, Gábor. Thank you, guys. And yeah, I guess we are here. Florian will be offline quite soon, I guess, but with Charlotte and Gábor, you could discuss here yeah, all the night, if you like. If you have enough power, they are here, yeah. Okay, thank you, and thank you for the invitation and for the organization, and yeah, good continuing of the festival.